Well, guys, it's another Men's Encounter North, man. I am super excited to be here. I've got to tell you, it's always an honor to be asked to come speak, and I know there's a lot of great speakers that come here to speak at Men's Encounter North, and I'm honored to be included in that group of people, even with my level of speaking ability, and I've always been very humbled by that. So I wanted to tell you, though, that there's a lot of great speakers that come to Men's Encounter North, but it can never replace, just listening to the speakers could never replace the real deal. Men's Encounter North is just amazing, and I'm really missing my brothers and actually getting to see them out here, and the interaction that happens when we get there. The Spirit of God is constantly present at these events, and I would encourage y'all to come to this. The next one that we're actually going to have, where there's going to be, where we're actually going to get to physically be in the same building with each other, is going to be on October 16th and 17th. And so mark that on your calendar. If you actually go to men'sencounternorth.com right now, you can get $10 off of the already super low price of $85. You'll get it for $75. And it's you come in Friday night, and it's all the way through Saturday, and it's just one of the greatest times that you're going to have, and men of God just coming together and just seeing God moving us. So please mark your calendars for October 16th and 17th. I'm going to get right into what I feel like God is wanting to share today, and I entitled my message, Flesh and Kingdom Identity. How many people watching this video knows that you can build or create something and God have absolutely nothing to do with it? We as humans have the power to do whatever we set our minds to do, with or without God. An example in the Bible was the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was actually a great idea to try to keep everybody together. And they said, let's make a name for ourselves so that we may not be scattered. Think about that. Now, many great kingdoms have been built in the flesh, many of them even greater than the wealth and status and power of kingdoms that follow God. Now, the thing that we create can be beautiful, impressive to others, and even be acceptable by onlookers as blessed by God. Yet it still not be a kingdom endeavor led by the King of Kings. Even great ministries can be built on your gifts, your talents, and your personal identity. I want to tell you a story about a 1997 Chevy Camaro that became one of the most profound prophetic pictures I've ever experienced in my life. And there was a very clear message from God from beginning to end of this story. In February of 2019, I was watching YouTube videos, and I kept seeing these videos of kids who were spray painting these junker cars and making them look pretty awesome, actually. And so I decided I was going to go ahead and buy one of my favorite cars of all times. It was the Gen 4 Chevy Camaro, and I found one on the Craigslist for $1,300. And I went out and bought $200 worth of red paint, the cheapest stuff you could buy at Walmart, red paint and clear coat, and just decided I was going to paint this car. And I bought all the stuff to sand it down and everything. I'm hoping that they're going to be able to show this video where you can actually see what the car looked like. It wasn't just a horrible job, but I knew there was a lot of stuff that I missed on it. But I spent whole days sanding and painting to get it to this point. And I spent so many hours on it every day that I actually kind of started growing attached to this car. And with my own health declining, I began seeing this broken down old car as more than just a car. As I would drive it around in my old ball cap and t-shirt, I realized the car was more me than the much nicer professional looking car I was driving for my business. A friend of mine who owns a paint and body shop, he saw my little video on Facebook, and he said, man, you could have came over and used my painting bay and my professional spray guns and all that. And I was like, oh man, that's cool. And I started thinking about it. I was just like, you know what? I think I'm going to fix this old fella up, man. I think I'm going to actually go buy some paint, some real good paint, and make it work. And so he introduced me to his paint supplier. I went out and bought this real nice paint. And I was really excited about making this car look good, and eventually I was hoping to drive it every day. So on this Saturday, I brought the car to my friend's shop and spent the next 10 hours sanding it down. I mean, I worked all day long on it. And he showed me how to sand and how to splatter it with like black paint so that I could make sure that I got all the smooth surfaces and that there wasn't any like little chips and pits and stuff like that in it. But after focusing my attention on that car all day long, again, I was just falling in love with it, man. I was like, this car, I'm gonna really do something with it, and so I just kept on working with it. However, I got done that day on Saturday, and I was planning on coming back the next day on Sunday to actually do the painting of it. And so I start home, and on the way home, the car stalls. Now, I had actually thought about potentially replacing the engine and actually fixing this car up, but I hadn't quite committed to that point yet. Anyway, I made another mile or so down the road and the car stalled again, but I actually did make it all the way home with it. I knew that it was overheating and everything. So got it home and first thing the next morning, I wake up and just go straight out to my car. I didn't get dressed or anything. I was in my sleeping shorts, barefooted, no shirt, hair standing up all over my head. And I was going to go out and check on this car. So I opened up the hood. I saw that the radiator was empty, so I put water in the radiator, hoping I could see a leak. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm just going to run this down the street a couple miles, get the engine heated up so that I could, see if I could find this leak. It was driving great. It started up just fine. I made it down the road about 2 miles, turned around. It was running great. And just about the time that I get to where I'm going to be turning into my neighborhood, it stalls on me. And so I'm like, oh man. So I pull it off on the side of the road and I sit there for a while, try to start it. Unlike the day before, it was not going to start. This car was done. It was not going to start. And I was like, oh man. So I reach over in my passenger seat to pick up my phone to call my wife. And I realize my phone's sitting on the nightstand next to my bed. And so here I am sitting in the car contemplating what I'm going to do next. I have the only option I see is if this car starts, I'm driving it home. If it doesn't start, I'm walking. So here I am, half naked, with this beat up old car, and it's now steam's coming out of the engine. So I close the door and I start my walk home. I began this walk of shame down the highway, leading back into my neighborhood. And man, I just had to hide my face as cars were driving by. I was like, oh God, please don't let somebody see me that knows me, please. And all I can say is that nobody stopped to ask if I needed help. That's all I can say is like, here's this half-naked guy walking down the street from a car that's all sanded down, multicolored, looked like I pulled it out of the junkyard. And all I can imagine was, wow, this guy had a really rough night is what these people are thinking as they're driving by. But it was this walk and the next decision that I would make that would mark such an amazing revelation that would actually take 9 months to actually birth. And I love that it was actually 9 months. And God, again, it was a clear picture to me what was happening. So it was on this walk home that I realized just how bad both of us looked, me and the car. And something rose up inside of me. And that car somehow represented me. It became me. Somehow I'd identified with this car and its broken down status in life. And I remember saying to myself, this car is not going to the junkyard. No matter what it takes, I'm saving it and I will bring it back to life. And part of me was kind of talking about myself and my own condition, but I'd not only taken ownership of this vehicle, but I had my mindset that I had the power of life or death for this car. I even went as far as giving the car a name. I named it Deadpool. It was going to be red and black, and I had bought some Deadpool stickers I was going to put on it. And my Christian witness is very important to me, and I know that Deadpool is not the perfect representative of a Christian. But for whatever reason, I thought it was going to be a funny story, and I was okay with Deadpool, and I didn't find out till much later exactly why that was okay. And you'll hear in the story how that came about and why Deadpool was such an amazing reason to name this car Deadpool. So as soon as I get back home from this very embarrassing walk, I called the tow company and had it towed to the first of 2 mechanics that it went to. So I went ahead and ordered the engine block and all the parts, and I began to plan on all the things that I was going to buy to get this car back into perfect condition. And like I said, the project would take 9 months. So I get the car taken over to the mechanic, and for 3 solid months, it sat there untouched. Now, I now refer to this time as the first trimester of this baby. So for the first 3 months, it went untouched. I kept going back and trying to talk to the mechanic and ask him, when are you going to get started? Every time there was excuse after excuse after excuse, and finally, after about 3 months, I'm done. Okay, I'm taking it somewhere else, and I had it towed to the second mechanic, who also said, oh yeah, we'll get right to it. It won't take very long, and it sat there again for a month before he'd finally get to it. And I refer to this as the second trimester. So we went through the first 3 months, and now we're on the second 3 months. He started working on it after about a month, and as things started getting replaced, like I wanted some new brakes and some different things, and they had to take some things off to put some things on, and every time he took something off, it broke. He's like, man, this thing's a rust bucket. But now I've already got so much money into it that I was like, man, we just got to keep going, And so what started out as just like an engine swap ended up becoming a complete structural rebuild. I mean, the whole thing. But it took about 6 months. After 6 months of waiting, I was able to drive it with the new engine and everything, and it drove great. And I was, way more money than I anticipated, but I was able to drive it home. It had new chrome wheels. I put a new exhaust on it. There was all kinds of really cool things. So I was excited about getting it painted. So I'm right where I left off 6 months prior. I'm going and bringing it back to my friend who's going to paint it. So I bring it back to my body shop friend to begin now the third trimester, if you're keeping track. However, after all the work that I had put into it, originally I was going to try to paint it myself, and but this time I was like, I've gone too far for me to mess it up on a paint job, and so I decided to let my friend go ahead and paint it, and he gave me this great deal. But again, it would take 3 months for him to complete it. Now I'm going to go back a little bit, back here to the beginning of that first, the third trimester. Things actually started picking up for me spiritually. There's a spot in my life there for a short time that I was having some health problems. I had doctors telling me that I was going to have a heart transplant or I wasn't going to live. I wasn't feeling great. And so during this time frame, I was thinking maybe God was done with me. But here at the beginning of this third trimester of the birth of this revelation, I began to start feeling better again. My health started improving. God had resurrected a vision He had given me over a year prior to this that I thought was just not going to be a part of my future. And He began connecting me with people who immediately caught this vision that I had. I was receiving prophetic words that were so specific that I knew God wasn't done with me yet. So by the end of 2019, the first websites were being worked on, which was really cool, looking in hindsight and seeing how God's timing was. So now back to the story with the Camaro. The third trimester finally came to an end, and the birth of Deadpool was complete. And so I get the call to come get it, and man, it looked gorgeous. It looked like showroom, better than showroom quality to me. I was just so impressed with how good it looked. And so I get this on a Thursday, and that Friday was the last Men's Encounter North. Some of you might remember, I came that night with a friend, and I had to leave right after I spoke. We had committed to going to a revival that was happening in Austin, and so me and my friend were going out of town to go to Austin. I felt like the Lord really wanted us to go. I wasn't sure why, but I felt like I needed to go. And it was this weekend that was just one of the most confusing weekends I think I've ever had in my life. Billy is an amazing man of God. He loves the Lord, and he gets so much revelation from God on a consistent basis. He's pretty much homebound a lot of times, so he doesn't get out as much to talk to people and everything. So I thought it would be a nice trip to bring Billy on. And he had so much stuff that he was sharing with me during this trip. It was 3 solid days. And I kept asking God, I was like, what is it about this weekend? I'm trying to make sense of what you're trying to tell me, but it's just a muddled bunch of mess. We didn't even actually end up getting to go to the whole revival. I was like, I don't understand this. Nothing went like I was expecting. It was absolutely chaotic throughout the whole thing. And Billy was just constantly giving me stuff that I just couldn't comprehend, and it didn't make sense. I couldn't put the puzzle pieces together. So on the way home from what I thought was a failed weekend, I was like, God, I still just don't know what this weekend was all about. I knew I was supposed to do it, but it was just seemed like such a mess. My friend was still, just kind of sharing more revelation, and we're off to bring and drop him off. And so, again, I wasn't making sense of anything that he was saying, and praying, Lord, just can you please tell me what happened this weekend? And my mind was just spinning. That's where I was. My mind was spinning. And man, right in the middle, Billy's still talking, and the Lord just kind of floods the car, and he starts speaking to me, and I just start, and the song just kind of came out of me. I just started singing. Billy's still talking, and in the middle of Billy's conversation, I just start singing the song. Y'all probably know it. It's in the eye of the storm, he remains in control. In the middle of the war, he guards my soul. And you know that song. And I just began singing that chorus. And for the first time in 3 days, it got completely quiet. It was quiet in there. And I just knew. I understood. And there was a clear message that God was showing me. And I had this vision. I was able to see, but I knew exactly what God was saying. And through all the stuff that had happened that weekend, a message formed in my mind. And this is what God said. He says, I am in the whirlwind. Prophetic words that didn't come from me is in the whirlwind. False teachings are in the whirlwind. But keep your eyes on the path and your ears to my voice. I'm going to say it one more time. Keep your eyes on the path and your ears to my voice. Now, from your position inside the eye of the storm, and as this storm moves, you need to move with it. Keep your eye on the path and your ear to my voice. From that position, you're going to be able to look from the inside the whirlwind, and you're going to be able to see those things that are from me. Now, don't grab onto those things and try to hold on to it, or you'll get sucked into the chaos. What I want you to do is I want you to pluck that information out and put it in your heart till I make it manifest. That was pretty profound, man. It was just like an instant download, and I knew exactly what he was saying, is that we cannot get too hung up in anything. We have to keep our eyes on the path and our ears to his voice, and he's going to move us and clear the path through this whirlwind. So I finally dropped off my friend and headed home, just kind of wondering what this whirlwind was supposed to look like. I mean, it was pretty tremendous, and I was like, man, something big is about to happen. So the next morning, I finally get my chance to drive Deadpool. And this is going to be my first day of the rest of my life driving Deadpool is kind of what I was thinking. So I drove it to the gym, showed it off to my friends. They all thought it was great, loved it, sounded great with the new exhaust and everything. And so I'm on my way back from the gym, and as I'm about to pull into my neighborhood, I noticed that, it's a two-lane farm-to-market road. And there was a whole line of cars coming at me. And so I had to turn left into my neighborhood. And so as these cars are coming, I knew I was not going to be able to make it to turn left. And so I put on my blinker and stop. And the next thing I know, I see a little flash in my rear view right before this truck just smashes into the back of me and throws me sideways into the oncoming traffic. Now, the lead car, I told you, was already right there. So this almost happened simultaneously. This car smashes it, the truck smashes in the back of me and throws me in like boom, boom, just like that. And hopefully you'll be able to see the pictures. They're going to show the pictures right now of what that car looked like. Now, all I can say is inside that car, it had to look like something from the Matrix. When the truck hit me from behind, my seat collapsed and fell back flat. And almost simultaneously, the car hit me in the side, and it broke the dash inward. So it broke toward me. Now, if I'd have been sitting up, it would have been like a bullet shooting all the contents of the dash right into me. But because my seat fell back, and I'm just imagining this, as my seat falls back, all this dash just kind of flies over my head. And I think maybe one thing might have just barely tapped me right here because I got a little skin tear at my hairline here. But I don't know how this happened, but on the all the contents of the dash, including a little, I made a Deadpool dash cover that was on top. All of it was behind the passenger seat. And when I looked over, it was all crumpled up in metal because the whole side of my car was crushed. So everything from the dash somehow made it over my head or past me and behind the passenger seat of the car. It was just amazing. I finally, everything stopped, and people started coming out of their cars and trying to come around, and they were wanting to see what was happening on the inside of this car. I think that everybody that saw this accident happen, it was such a high impact accident. I don't think anybody was expecting someone to be alive in the car. And so I saw them looking in the window, and I'm looking out, and they're all just like, oh my God, And so I'm trying to get out, and they're like, no. This lady was super sweet lady, was just like saying, no, you just need to stay there and wait for the ambulance. And so I was like feeling around, like, oh, now I got all my parts, and I just have a little blood kind of coming out here. I think I want to get out. And so finally the lady just runs around, her and another guy, and they open the door, and I get out of the car. And so it was at this point that, I get out of the car, and I turn around, and I look at this car. And all I could say was it felt like this holy excitement. You would look at it and go, oh no, my car. It was not that at all. It was this holy excitement just filled me. The Holy Spirit was just all over me. And now a whole crowd had gathered around to look at this horrible accident. I mean, we're talking about lines of cars that got affected by this. So they're all crowding around me. And all I could do, I felt the Spirit of God hit me. And I looked at that car, and I started looking at the people that were around. And I pointed at them, and I said, that's Jesus. And I'd go to the next person, and I'm like, that right there, that's Jesus. And they were just like, they'd back up and their mouths open going, yeah, that is Jesus. Amen. And so we started having church right there pretty much. I mean, it was, the Spirit of God was so present. It was just absolutely amazing. The one thought that I can say that I knew for sure is that every stinking millisecond of our lives, God is in control of. And what I felt excited about there that day was that I was still on his radar. I was so sure at one point that he was about ready to take me, that this was to me the proof. And it was the first real chaotic thing that happened after this word that he had given me about the whirlwind. So I was like, wow, if this is how the whirlwind starts, I can't imagine what it's going to look like. So hey, anyway, the lady went back into my car and dug around and was looking for my phone and stuff like that. And she was able to find my phone and my keys and stuff, but she wasn't able to find my wallet. And I went on in and sit down in the ambulance. And because I had this little bit of blood coming down, they put this piece of gauze on my head, right there, and because they didn't want to put a Band-Aid, they were afraid that I would have to have stitches if I did that. And so they put the gauze there, and to hold the gauze, they took this roll of white gauze and just wrapped it all around my head. I look like something out of a Vietnam War movie. That soldier coming home that has the head covered. That's exactly what I felt like. And so I get out of the car, and everybody's so busy, trying to take care of the accident, the ambulance drivers this side of the road, and I just start going, well, I don't think I'm going to ask anybody to take me home. And I just grabbed my gym bag and walked the rest of the way home. Now, if you remember right, the last time I was on this road, the last time I really got to drive this car, ended up in the walk of shame. Remember? That was the day that I put my identity in that car, and I said, I don't care what it takes. I'm making this car live. I have that kind of power, right? So here I am, and I walk in. This is kind of a funny story. I walk in, and I'm just trying to imagine what this is going to look like whenever I get there, I'm just laughing inside because I'm perfectly fine, right? So I walk in. I had tried to call my wife, and the reason I was walking home is she didn't answer the phone because it was on silent and she was asleep. I didn't want her later to find out I was at the hospital or something like that, so that's the reason I walked home. But I walk into the bedroom, and she's still asleep. I go, well, Deadpool's dead. And she's like, what? And she looks over at me. It's still kind of dark in the room, and she goes, what is that on your head? And so I flip on the light, and I just start telling her about the accident. And she's like, oh my God, so she's freaking out a little bit. And I was like, oh, let's go to the ambulance and get checked out. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But what was amazing really about this is that, I was not really upset about this car getting crushed. I mean, you would think that I was, but I was, because of this excitement that I had, I knew that God was going to use this, and that this was all part of God's plan for some reason. And so the only thing that I was upset about is I could not find my wallet. And so in the wallet, of course, I had my driver's license, my credit card, credit cards and stuff like that. But I had this $2 bill that was given to me back before I joined the Navy. So for 33 years, I moved this $2 bill from wallet to wallet to wallet, and it had a lot of meaning to me. So the only thing I was really upset about is that I didn't have my wallet. Well, about a week later, Cindy and I was like, man, we need to go try to find this wallet. And so we drove over to the record yard where this was. And I was hoping if I could dig around in there and just, I really didn't have a lot of time at the accident to dig around. So I thought maybe I could find it. And so I get to the record yard, and man, we look at this car again, and it was just like, how in the world did I not get hurt? You look at this car, and it's just impossible not to see how bad a person could get hurt in something that looks that horrible. So we just started taking pictures right away. And so I went and looked inside the car. I mean, it was crushed on the inside. You couldn't get into places. So everywhere I could get, I looked for my wallet, couldn't find it, and finally kind of resigned that I'd lost this wallet forever. So I get out of the car, and I look. I start, I just take one last look at the car, and I'm thinking, I guess this is it. This is going to be, I'm done. And the record guy, the guy that had brought us into the yard, said, now he was on the other side of the car, on the crushed side. And he goes, hey man, is this your wallet? And he reaches, I see him reach down, and he picks it up and holds it up in the air like this. He goes, this a little scratch. I'm like, yeah, that's my wallet, man. And so I'm really glad that we took this picture. This next picture you're going to see is the picture of the car crushed in the first pictures that we took when we got to the junkyard. So this was taken before the guy even got out of his truck, or I would have somehow thought that there might be some foul play here or something. But we have picture proof here. Anyway, somehow through the crash itself, from the wrecker loading the car up onto the wrecker, from it being transported 30 miles and finally dropped in this resting place, my wallet worked its way through mangled metal out a closed, crushed door to fall softly on the ground. And you'll see the picture. They're going to show you a close-up right now. Do you see the wallet? Now tell me that isn't God. And what was in the wallet? My identity. So my physical identification was in that wallet. Now I'm going to show you one more picture of this car, and this is why it was okay to call it Deadpool, because it ends the story very well. That picture says maximum effort. Maximum effort. You see, God has a plan for your life. His idea of success is much different than the world's idea of success. While maximum effort is accepted as the way we successfully serve God, while I can agree that we should always give God our best, what God really wants is maximum obedience. He wants to get the glory through a yielded vessel. In order for Him to build His kingdom, we have to keep our eyes on the path He lays before us and our ears attuned to His voice. We can't get hung up on our great abilities to speak or do whatever it is that we think we can do with great skill, or even our lack of abilities. We can't just dig in and do it our way and just assume that God's going to back it. We can't build our Tower of Babel and think that making a name for ourselves is the way that we advance the kingdom of God. The measure of success is not going to be what you're able to accomplish through maximum effort. Anyone can accomplish anything on this earth without God. Man can do things without God. And the measure of success as a Christian is going to be this. When you hear these words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Have you created a Deadpool? This ministry, my business, that idea, it's going to make it no matter what. Do you hold the power to make it live or die? Is your identity wrapped up in the success of your Deadpool? Is that your identity? Well, here's kingdom identity. It's no longer I that live, but Christ that lives in me. I am no longer my own. I was bought with a price, a very hefty price at that. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in me, and I am one with Christ. I'm a new creation that's not of this world, and there's nothing on this earth that has my identity. Though the world may fall around me, yet will I praise and worship and give glory to the King of Kings. Now, the whirlwind didn't stop at my car accident, as many may know. Shortly after my accident, we heard the first words of the coronavirus. Weeks later, every church in the world would have to close their doors. Prophetic words would be plentiful, and there'd be conspiracy theories around every corner. We'd hear believers rebuking the enemy because they thought this was all from the devil. Oppression, depression, and hopelessness filled the earth. Christians didn't know whether they should walk in faith and stand against government regulations or walk in wisdom and basically lay down. In all this, God has a plan. God is in the whirlwind. There's chaos in the whirlwind. Prophetic words that didn't come from God is in the whirlwind. False teachings are in the whirlwind. But make no mistake, God is not afraid. And this whirlwind is uprooting some things, some deep roots. It's dismantling some things that were not of Him. It's actually exposing some things that are absolutely ridiculous. We see it every day on YouTube. He's rejecting those that have built their towers, and He's setting the stage for the greatest apostolic move in the history of the world. This explosion is going to happen outside the walls of the church and through relationships. Christians from every walk of life are going to begin opening their homes to share the gospel. Now, this is the vision that the Lord has given me. In the next few weeks, we're going to be launching our first website called findahousechurch.com. And it's going to facilitate the creation of house churches to easily be found across the nation, wherever you are. It's being built in a way that churches are going to have their own web pages, their own landing pages to send their members to, so that they can start building a contingency plan in case we're ever forced to meet in small groups. And my perfect vision of what I believe this is going to end up turning into is I believe that churches are going to start training their members, equipping the saints to do the work of ministry and conduct church from their house and evangelize their neighborhoods. It's going to be huge. I believe that's going to happen everywhere across the nation. Now, never in a million years, when God gave me this idea 18 months ago about moving outside the walls of the church, never in a million years would I have imagined that every church in the world would be forced to close their doors and consider meeting in smaller groups. Back when the Lord showed me this for the first time. I trust the Lord. I know that He has a plan, and everything that is happening, He has control of. Every micro millisecond of our lives and everyone's life on this planet, He knows the outcome. He has it. And no matter what the chaos is, no matter what you're feeling, I'm here to tell you tonight, God is in the whirlwind. Thank you.